One thing that I'm really curious about is how these things play out in your teaching. Um, and I'm curious whether, you know, working with students and bringing some of these ideas of kind of like performance and re-inhabiting to them, whether that has released any undetonated energy that you weren't expecting, or that you learned something in the process.
Definitely. I mean, as I started doing this writing, I did some reenactments in class. So they had to be short performances. We did a work by the Cuban American performance artist Anna Mendieta called Body Tracks, that was performed at Franklin Furnace in New York in the early 80s, I think. And she walked onto stage, put her hands in buckets of blood with maybe paint, and then tracked her hands down a wall that may have just been white or may have had white paper on. And so that's me describing a performance that I only know through a description, a written description. There's a video performance that she did in her studio, and there's some paper versions of the tracks. And so
Okay, these pieces of paper with
exactly,
kind of blood or
yeah,
paint
yeah,
smeared on
like
them.
two, like arms stretch out wide, coming in towards the body and down. And so it was a way of exploring this artwork and thinking about, we weren't there at the original performance, but we have these descriptions and documents. What would it mean for us to perform it? And we did it. We talked about how we were going to do it, and we had to do it in a normal seminar room in the university. So we didn't use blood, we used red paint. And we realized in the description there was a drum, and that was not anything I'd ever thought about when teaching this work. I taught this work for a number of years just through the visuals and the video, which is silent. But in the original performance, there was a drum. And so somebody decided to, kind of do a drum beat. And we realized it changed it into a space of ritual. And we were all very silent as we watched different people attempt to redo the gesture.
Yeah. And because we've talked about kind of the experience of the performer, like, I mean, were you one of the people smearing blood? Were your students the ones doing that?
Do you know what? I can't remember if I did it. That's a weird thing. I can
That
remember
is
the
weird.
intensity of the room,
Yeah.
but I don't think I did. I think I watched it and 3 or 4 people performed it, and I wrote about it afterwards. But what's weird, this is the thing about the audience and the performer, I can't remember, because we all practiced the gesture, even if we didn't put our hands in the paint. So
Okay.
now,
Yeah. You all reenacted
yeah,
in some sense.
yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, so it's sort of hard to ask whether this was your experience or a student's, but what did the people who did that with the blood on their hands, did they learn anything through doing it as opposed to just reading about it or watching a video?
I think for the students that I spoke to, because also they're art students, not art historians, they really found that they could kind of get inside of the artwork, and it was an experience that they said stayed with them for a long time. I mean, I found the same thing. Like, once you've done it, it also doesn't leave you. And one of the artists went on to take part in an action called Where is Anna Mendieta, which is a series of protests when Carl Andre's work was shown at Tate Modern, because Anna Mendieta was married to Carl Andre, who's an American sculptor, a very famous sculptor. But Anna Mendieta died, and some people think that Carl Andre was responsible for her death. And so there's been an ongoing kind of protest about his work being shown. So it also kind of went from that kind of quite formal reenactment in class to an interest in an artist who had a really profound feminist practice, and also a tragic life story, and kind of ended up part of her kind of sort of activism, which is a very unexpected kind of outcome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope this doesn't sound too glib, but kind of, you know, it's not like you were able to bring her to life again through that reenactment of her performance, but there was some way in which you were kind of bringing life to her art again.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be, I mean, not all reenactment is necessarily going to do something interesting, but I think it can be a really, really profound experience. And one of her friends, another American artist, Nancy Spiro, also reperformed Body Tracks as a memorial to Anna Mendieta after she died. And I didn't actually realize that when we did it in the seminar. I read about it later, but some sense in kind of having that sort of closeness in the reperformance, I think was important for her, definitely.
Yeah.